It's just past 7:30 p.m. across India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DDI India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Caroline Malone. Caroline, good to have you with us.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we hear about how European ministers have been in Israel trying to reduce regional tensions. But first, the headlines.
G7 and European Union leaders meet in Capri, Italy to discuss stepping up sanctions against Iran after Tehran's missile and drone attack on Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu thanks visiting German and British foreign ministers for support, reiterates Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself against Iran.
Thank you for the support you've given Israel in the Iranian attack. It's important. And it's something, of course, we should consider as well among the other considerations that we're going to be discussing.
And Donald Trump's ex-fixer, Michael Cohen, now poised to serve as a prosecution witness in the former U.S. president's historic hush money criminal trial case. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Italy's Capri Island for a key meeting on Wednesday as the group mulls imposing sanctions on Iran after its attack on Israel on Saturday. The meeting is bringing together the foreign ministers of the U.S., Italy, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the U.K. and the European Union. Germany has said that the delegates will also discuss support for a Ukrainian air defense system in its conflict with Russia. DD India's Giles Gibson is now with us. He joins us live from Capri for more on this story. Giles, is the G7 in one voice regarding sanctioning Iran for its attack on Israel?
Well, at this stage, we are still waiting to see exactly what sort of action the G7 are going to take in terms of trying to get Israel and Iran to de-escalate in terms of tensions that have been building, of course, with those drone and missile strikes that Tehran launched against Israeli territory over the course of the weekend. We are coming up to, in about an hour's time or so, the moment when Antonio Tajani, the Italian foreign minister, will welcome the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, Lord Cameron, and his other G7 counterparts at that hotel that you can see just behind me. And we are also seeing signs that we are getting closer and closer to the start of these talks in terms of helicopters buzzing overhead and security personnel patrolling the roof of that hotel just over my left shoulder. Of course, the Italian G7 presidency have been building the agenda for this meeting for some time now, but clearly events around the world, especially in the Middle East, are really going to really change the agenda in terms of what's right at the top of it. We expect the situation in the Middle East, not just tensions between Israel and Iran, but also the situation in Gaza, as well as the Red Sea, to really dominate these talks over the next couple of days or so.
All right. Giles, are concerns about China helping Russia build up its military strength also expected to be discussed?
Yeah, there is a very busy agenda for the G7 foreign ministers, as well as those talks on the Middle East. We're going to see them discussing Ukraine and possible ways to support Ukraine using $300 billion worth of frozen Russian assets in the West. They're also going to be discussing stability in the Indo-Pacific, which will certainly include discussions around China and tensions on the Taiwan Strait. They're also keen, the Italian presidency, to have some talks around how the G7 can engage better with the continent of Africa. And there are also some topics that really the G7 presidency, Italy, the holder of that, have really been trying to push to the top of this agenda, things like global governance that could be introduced in terms of the risks and opportunities that are presented by artificial intelligence or AI. But as ever with these meetings, you can sort of set the agenda weeks or months before, and then global events really sort of change exactly what these foreign ministers will be talking about. And so the Middle East really set to dominate much of their discussions.
Giles Gibson in Capri, Italy, thank you for joining. Now, coming back to the Israel-Hamas conflict, Qatar has said that talks on a ceasefire in Gaza and release of hostages are at a delicate phase. Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said that mediators were trying to address a stumbling block. Qatar, along with Egypt, is mediating talks to halt fighting between Israel and Hamas.
The negotiations are between moving forward and stumbling. During this time, we are passing through a delicate phase with some stumbling, and we are trying as much as possible to resist this stumbling block and to move forward to put an end to this suffering that the Palestinian people are passing through in Gaza, as well as to retrieve the hostages.
As tensions with West Asia reach a tipping point, Israel's war cabinet is expected to meet again on Wednesday to decide on a response to the Iranian attack. Meanwhile, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi warned of a severe and heavy response to any Israeli attack violating Iranian territorial integrity and harming its national interests.
If the Zionist regime makes the slightest move to violate our territory and harm the national interest of the Islamic Republic, they must understand that they will face a severe and heavy response. The plan of action for Troop Promise was a limited operation. It was not a comprehensive and extensive plan. Had it been much larger action, then the supporters of Zionist regime would have seen that nothing would have remained of the Zionist regime. But it was decided to carry out a limited operation and deliver punishment to the Zionist regime.
Now, Washington and its allies hope that new economic sanctions against Iran will help persuade Israel to limit the scope of its retaliation. My colleague Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C. She takes it forward from me here and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Caroline, global diplomacy at test here to resolve conflicts?
Well, that's right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked his visiting foreign ministers of Germany and the UK for their support. However, he's reiterated that Israel would make its own decisions regarding its security. And Netanyahu has stressed that Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself against Iran.
I
am coming now from meetings with the foreign ministers of Great Britain and Germany. Last night I spoke to British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and soon I will also speak to other leaders. I thank our friends for their support in the defense of Israel, and I say this both support in words and support in actions. They also have all kinds of suggestions and advice. I appreciate it. But I also want to make it clear. We will make our own decisions, and the state of Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself.
Well, after meeting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said that the Middle East must not be allowed to slide into a situation whose outcome is completely unpredictable. Baerbock was visiting Israel for the 7th time since the Hamas attack on October 7th to aid in efforts to de-escalate tension in the region.
Die Region darf nicht Zug um Zug in eine
The region must not step by step slide into a situation with a totally unpredictable outcome. Everyone must now act prudently and responsibly. I'm not talking about giving in. I'm talking about a wise restraint, which is nothing less than strength, because Israel, with its defensive victory, already showed strength last weekend.
Denn Stärke hat Israel mit seinem Defensivsieg am Wochenende schon gezeigt.
Well, the UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron highlighted a united front for Israel after Iran launched a barrage of drones and missiles on Israel last weekend in retaliation for a Damascus consular annex attack on April 1st. Well, Cameron has said he was in Israel to show solidarity with the nation.
The situation is very concerning. It's right to show solidarity with Israel. It's right to have made our views clear about what should happen next, but it's clear the Israelis are making a decision to act. We hope they do so in a way that does as little to escalate this as possible, and in a way that, as I said yesterday, is smart as well as tough. But the real need is to refocus back on Hamas, back on the hostages, back on getting the aid in, back on getting a pause in the conflict in Gaza. It's right to be here in Israel today to show solidarity after that appalling attack by Iran.
Well, DD India's Sarah Coates sent us this report on David Cameron's latest visit to Israel.
Sources close to the Security Cabinet, also the War Cabinet, they say that the Israelis will be delivering a powerful, a strategic blow to Iran. And really the only thing that they haven't decided upon yet is when this should happen. Now, there really is broad consensus here in Israel that there must be a significant response given this unprecedented attack that saw some 300 missiles and drones launched into Israel. But what we do need to remember here, Ollie, is that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he is under significant pressure really to make sure any kind of response doesn't cause a wider regional spillover. But he's also under a lot of pressure here domestically, especially from people who keep him in power, like the far right-wing coalition, which do sit on his security cabinet. We're talking here Bezalel Smotrich and also Itamar Ben-Gvir. They are calling on the Israeli Prime Minister, on the Israeli security establishment to hit Iran with everything it has. So certainly an extremely delicate, worrying situation.
Well, in the United States, Donald Trump's hush money trial is underway as a selection process is continuing to choose a panel of 12 members and 6 alternative jury members who can be fair to the former US president. The first 7 jurors were selected on Tuesday to serve in Trump's hush money criminal trial. Well, a former legal supporter and advisor to Trump, Michael Cohen, who once said he would take a bullet for Donald Trump, is now poised to serve as a prosecution witness in the future. Well, Trump spoke against the judge overseeing his New York criminal trial, repeatedly calling him conflicted and saying he should not be there. Well, DD India's Sally Patterson joins us live now from New York. Well, Sally, jury selection started this week. What do we know about that process so far?
Well, Caroline, as you say, we've got 7 jurors selected. That's out of 12 in total, plus 6 alternates. Now, that process has been quite drawn out, and we're expecting to continue that process in the rest of the week. What we saw on Monday when this criminal case began was 96 different jurors being brought in front of the judge, and they were quizzed by the prosecution about whether they would be biased in this case. The prosecution here is obviously keen to ensure the political views of these would-be jurors. The defense as well has a vested interest in making sure that these would-be jurors don't have views that could prejudice them against the former president. So all of these people were asked several questions about their political views. They were asked if they'd ever, for example, been to a Trump rally. They were asked what kind of media they consume. On a questionnaire, they were given options of the types of media sources that they read on a daily basis, the news channels they watch, all basically trying to get to the heart of what their political views are and whether that could have a prejudicial impact on this case. The Donald Trump is, of course, the former president of the United States, and so many people would have had some sort of interaction with both himself as the president, but also with the cases that he finds himself embroiled in across the United States. There are also very practical reasons why some people aren't able to be on that jury in the end. Clashes, for example, with work commitments. There was a medical doctor who said that they couldn't take that much time away from their patients. They were also asked if the work that they do might bring them into contact with Trump or his supporters or allies. For example, one would-be juror was asked about their work in real estate, because Donald Trump, of course, owns several properties here in New York City. The potential juror said, yes, he did work in real estate, as did Donald Trump, but the two had never met in that capacity. All of this is trying to whittle down what is a really vast number of people who could take that position, to try and get to that core number of jurors who will be the ones who bring this criminal case against Donald Trump. It's the first of several criminal trials that he's facing across the United States. He could find himself locked up if the court rules against him. Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty.
Well, that was Sally Patterson reporting from New York. Well, US President Joe Biden says he's considering a request from Australia to drop a decades-long push to prosecute the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, for publishing classified documents from the US. There are concerns over how he will be treated, though, and last month, the High Court in London ruled that without certain US guarantees, Assange could launch a new appeal against being extradited to face charges in the US. But the US has sent assurances, including saying that a sentence of death will never be sought or imposed on Assange. The Biden administration indicated that it is ready to reimpose oil sanctions on Venezuela on Thursday, citing President Nicolas Maduro's failure to uphold commitments to free and fair elections. The US is unlikely to renew a 6-month license that provided partial sanctions relief to Venezuela since October, following an election agreement between the government and the opposition. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio, Tanvi.
Caroline Malone joining us all from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Georgia's parliament approves the first reading of the controversial Foreign Agents Bill. And India's very own Charlie Chaplin launches a nationwide voter awareness campaign ahead of the great Indian election.
आपकी सुरक्षा है हमारे लिए बहुमूल्य, इसलिए जब भी लें एलपीजी सिलेंडर जरूर कराएं प्री डिलीवरी जांच। आपकी सुरक्षा को और बेहतर सुनिश्चित करने के लिए हर घर में हो रही है रसोई गैस उपकरणों की सुरक्षा जांच। अगर सुरक्षा होज खराब हो तो तुरंत बदलवाएं। आपातकालीन स्थिति में कॉल करें 1906। स्वच्छ ईंधन का वादा, सुरक्षित रसोई का इरादा।
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Now let's give you some festival fervor from India. Well, the country is celebrating Ram Navami, the festival marking the birth of Lord Ram on Wednesday. The newly built Ram temple in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya is all decked up for the Ram Navami celebrations. This year, the auspicious occasion was made more special by the Surya Tilak ceremony of Ram Lala, when the sun rays fell on the forehead of the deity's idol at noon. Devotees thronged in large numbers to get a glimpse of their deity. The celebrations mark the first big religious occasion after the consecration of Ram Lala in January this year. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also shared the visuals of watching Ramlala's Surya Tilak ceremony virtually and mentioned that this is a very emotional moment for him. And time now to give you the latest buzz from India's general elections. So campaigning for India's first phase of general elections concluded on Wednesday evening. In the first phase, 102 parliamentary seats spread over 21 states will go to polls on April 19th. The general elections are being conducted in 7 total phases, with voting set to end on June the 1st. The results will be declared on June the 4th. All political parties and their leaders are leaving no stone unturned to woo the voters in their favour. The term of the 17th Lok Sabha ends on June 16th. Besides, polling will also be held for electing new legislative assemblies in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim in a single phase on Friday. I beg your pardon. India's northern Uttarakhand state is bustling with poll fervour as the state's 5 Lok Sabha seats go to polls on April 19th. A report.
Landor will go to polls on April 19 and people here are very much excited to go to polls. They are happy the way things are functioning right now. But with these elections, they want little more.
Behold the picturesque allure of Landor, a place that has captured the hearts and minds with its breathtaking beauty. On days blessed with clarity and sunshine, one can marvel at the majestic peaks of Bandir Poonch, Swargrohini, Yamunotri, Gangotri and Kedarnath, while the view of the valley below leaves an indelible impression. With the impending elections in Uttarakhand scheduled for April 19th, the residents of Landor are eagerly gearing up to exercise their democratic right, embracing a newfound sense of civic duty.
Biggest issue with the Landor cantonment is the traffic. One, we need better roads, bigger roads, better connectivity and parking. Also with the cantonment, the residents have a lot of issues regarding repair, renovation of their buildings, mutations. So I hope that the government gets rid of the cantonments.
As far as the elections are concerned, we want better medical facilities here.
Amid the fervour of political rallies in Mussoorie, 2 dominant parties, the Congress and the BJP, vie for influence in the area. The tranquil ambience of Landor, punctuated by towering oaks and the embrace of alpine weather, imbues the region with an aura of serenity. The forthcoming elections hold the promise of shaping the destiny of Uttarakhand, charting a course for its future trajectory in many ways.
As Landor readies to poll, its beauty mirrors the hopes and aspirations of the people here, as these polls will decide the future trajectory of the state of Uttarakhand, and especially the region here. With camera person Manmohan, this is Siddhant Bharadwaj reporting for DDI India in Landor.
And India's very own Charlie Chaplin has launched a nationwide voter awareness campaign program ahead of the country's lower house elections. Rajan Kumar, an actor known for mimicking the great Charlie Chaplin, launched the initiative in northern India's Jammu and Kashmir on Tuesday. Kumar plans to take it to the far corners of the country before culminating this campaign in southern India's Kanyakumari. Kumar was seen going around Srinagar raising awareness among locals on the need to exercise their democratic right to vote, while being dressed in the trademark attire of the legendary actor and comic icon Charlie Chaplin. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Georgian Parliament approved the first reading of the controversial Foreign Agents Bill. The bill was approved with 83 lawmakers supporting the legislation and no votes against. The law would require media and non-commercial organizations to register as being under foreign influence if they receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad. Thousands of raged protesters marched through the Greek capital on Wednesday over rising costs. The demonstrators, through a 24-hour strike, are demanding higher pay to cope with the rising living costs. Ships remained docked at the Greek ports and train services were halted as part of the action. Ahead of the Earth Day, a giant installation made of plastic waste rose up from New York City's Highline Park. The artist created the sculpture to highlight the single-use plastic pollution problem and inspire behavioral change. The Greek legend of Hydra was his inspiration. Coral bleaching afflicts most of Australia's famed Great Barrier Reef. According to a report on Wednesday, coral bleaching was observed on 73% of the surveyed reefs. Bleaching is triggered by changes in water temperatures that cause corals to expel the colorful algae living in their tissues. And as we end, for all the fans of Queen of Pop Taylor Swift there, her musical journey is now out on a comic book. The sequel to Female Force, Taylor Swift, is set to hit the shelves on April 24th, with Tidal Wave Comics delivering an engaging narrative that delves deeper into the pop superstar's philanthropic endeavors. The 22-page story will be available in both soft and hardcover versions with a unique cover. The cover features Taylor Swift with her beloved cats. So that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your feedback about the program on our different social media handles at DD